All right, welcome back to the Busy Executives podcast. I'm Michael Wolsten. I'm so excited for my guest here today that's joining us, Laura Eblen from Mazuma Credit Union, who's the Vice President of Member Experience and Government Affairs. And Laura, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, I know you and I have been able to connect professionally for the past few years. And I just love your heart for service. I love what you get to do, not only within the credit union movement, but just really your heart for leaders. And so we're going to dive right into that. But for folks who are maybe joining us for the first time with the Busy Executive podcast, we really try to provide that real world value for executives, for leaders, for world changers in 10-minute sections. So in 10 minutes or less, you're going to be able to listen to portions of this podcast and pull away some things that will help you continue to grow as a leader. So we're going to dive right in. Laura, I know a little bit of your story, but will you help the listeners just by kind of relaying a little bit of your professional journey? Where you kind of started from and where you're currently at, and just a little bit of the in-between of what has helped you grow as a leader.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So I am doing nothing today that it was ever related to my degree. I graduated with a degree in genetics. I thought I was going to go out and be a genetic counselor, and life has plans for you, and ended up in a small town in Missouri after graduation, and found this credit union that was looking for a receptionist. And I was like, well, I like to talk. I can answer phones, let me see what this is all about. This is going to be a temporary job. I'll do it for a little while, and then my husband's going to go to med school, and I'll be gone. So this is a short term. Fast forward 21 years in the credit union industry later,
Wow.
But started off as a receptionist and the admin assistant for the CEO, and let him he had so much knowledge and willingness to take a chance on a loudmouthed, out of the box thinker that it really said, this is the best spot for us. It taught me how to let your team make mistakes, when to support them when you're pretty confident it's going to fail, but how to give them those like special safe guide rails, right? Like the ways that it's okay to fail. And I love that. And I just continued to grow. So I go back to him and I'd say, okay, I've done this. Can I learn how to make a loan or pull a credit bureau today? And just slowly worked my way through the credit union. Managed a branch for about 10 years. And then this opportunity at Mazuma came forward. They had some rapid growth. They were looking for new individuals to join the team to help oversee the branch network. And I was like, oh man, that sounds great. I love being able to help our members, right? In any way that I can. So to be able to help more members in a different way was really exciting. So moved my family over to Kansas, joined Mazuma Credit Union. I've been here since 2012, although it feels like just a quick minute. Like, it has been incredible. It is a great place to be able to grow and learn. So in the time that I've been here, I've probably had 8 different roles, 8 different titles, all the way from Director of Awesomeness, and now, Mega VP. But really, at the end of the day, it's finding ways to help our members. That is the coolest part of what I get to do.
I keep doing it. I love that. Yeah. There's so much I can point into, but tell me about the Director of Awesomeness. That's like the best title ever. Did you come up with that? Did they come up with this? What kind of led to that specifically?
Yeah. So I totally made the title up 100%. The original title that I had was AVP of something, something, something. It almost didn't fit on the business card. It was like 2 lines.
Yep.
And they were still defining the role. And I was like, well, really what you want me to do is create awesomeness for the team and for our members. And they said, yes, perfect. So I just started shortening it to Director of Awesomeness. It stuck around. I love using it. If you need an icebreaker at a conference, have a unique title, right? People are going to ask about it. You're going to learn. And I've just enjoyed it. So I had the Awesomeness title. I promoted myself to VP of Awesomeness at one point in the journey, when I was taking on some new roles. Even had business cards. Marketing was on board. So I had really great business cards made up that had Director of Awesomeness on it, VP of Awesomeness. But it's really about just going out and having fun and working hard, finding
Mhm.
those moments that you can really truly make a difference in as
Yeah.
many lives as possible. And so I'd still keep that title today, probably if I could. But
I love
I'm
it.
officially the Mega VP now, so I'm sticking with that
Okay.
for
Well,
now.
that's just as
Yeah,
awesome. I
not too
feel
bad.
like so. Yeah. Well, and I want to touch on that because I feel like sometimes, as leaders, there's kind of, you're in a corporate structure. There's a lot of
Mhm.
different corporate structures. There's lots of different cultures. Sometimes it can feel a little bit stuffy, right? So a title like culture or vice president or assistant vice president of awesomeness really, like you said, is a great icebreaker. But it sort of lends itself to, well, what does that mean, right? Like what are
Mhm.
you helping drive? And so did you find that it really helped you focus on your mission of helping, support the culture of the teams? You'd mentioned obviously helping really the branch network continue to grow. Did you
Mhm.
feel like that title and that focus really made a big difference for you and has kind of carried forward as well?
Oh, man, it made a huge difference. And I'll say, coming to Mazuma, they were starting to redefine their culture, and fun and teamwork were two of our core values that we really needed to work on. It's
Mm.
one thing to say that you have fun at work, and another to truly enjoy what you're doing. And fun doesn't always mean that you're dancing in the branch lobby, doing the cha-cha slide on Fridays at 2 o'clock, which we did and we loved. But it's
Nice.
also all the little ways that we can have fun together and know that we're making impactful work. So
Mm.
even when you're in the most stressful situations, it's learning to be your most authentic self and then putting your authentic self on display, which is where
Mm.
I struggled and had to learn. I was like, I have this vision of what a VP should look like, and how they should act. And I had to really weigh that against, who am I? What is it that I
Mm.
value? Is this going to be something that I can do? And then not only that, we've got a team that's watching uh, everything that we do
Mm.
as leaders. Am I going to make sure that I am displaying it genuinely and
Mm.
authentically?
Mhm.
So it was a lot of time of self discovery. At the same time, showing others that you can make mistakes and you can be human and you can try something new. I don't know if I still have it. Let me look. Yes, it may not come up on camera, but at one point I had hot pink hair and would wear fun wigs
Nice.
to work. So would Laura of genetic studying have ever dyed her hair hot purple? No.
Mm.
Laura, the VP of awesomeness, heck yeah. Why not? So
I love
it pushed me to know who I was, get out of my own way so many
Mm.
times that we stop ourselves because we think, oh, that's not how it should be.
Mhm.
And when you can work with people that you're genuine with, it makes all the difference that you can figure out not only who you are, but you can help them figure out who they are, and make sure that you're showing everybody else you can lead by example.
Right, right. And I want to go to a place where we talk about how, you being you and setting that example and how that can really affect things like engagement and productivity. I'll go there here in a moment. But I'm curious because you get to go around and travel. I see you traveling all the
Mhm.
time. You get to really be, a really big influencer for the credit union movement. You've been able to go to Canada and help and be part of these workshops. And so my question to you is, do you have other credit union leaders who maybe come up to you like, Laura, I kind of wish I could do, what you're doing. Or gosh, I wish that I could kind of like pull off what you're
Mhm.
pulling off, when it comes to being that authentic leader, having
Mhm.
fun. But, so what, when you have those types of conversations, pull us in a little bit, like what are some of the encouraging things that you share for folks
Mhm.
to help them sort of step into this next place of leadership, feeling more authentic, but also maybe role modeling that a little bit where they might feel a little bit stuck. They might feel a little bit
Mhm.
stifled in either their current role or kind of in the current culture that they're trying to lead.
I've learned a couple of things. One, I try to do something, I say be bold. And that is truly do something every day that scares you. And it
Mm.
doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be, you know what, I'm going to have this conversation with my kid that I've been avoiding, or,
Mm.
I'm going to try something new for dinner. It doesn't have to be big steps, but it has to be intentional. And that's what I tell people,
Mm.
be bold, find a way that you can come closer to who you are and find things that work and don't work for you by doing something every day. The thing that scared me the most was traveling by myself, just absolutely petrified, going somewhere where I don't know people. And, am I going to be that person in the corner eating lunch by themselves? So I had to put myself out there. I had to try and put myself in situations that made me feel uncomfortable so that I could grow. And what I found is that when you were in that space, in vulnerability, that amazing things happen. I sat down at lunch at one of my very first credit union conferences, I just thought some guy sitting, next to me. We had a great conversation about loans and ways that we could drive auto productivity. No clue that he was CEO of one of the largest credit unions in the U.S. at the time. Wow. And so it was kind of that ignorance of I'm just going to go up and talk to somebody. And that's what I tell people. Just find something that scares you and then lean into it. Lean into it, because I guess the other thing would be make sure you're sharing that journey. It doesn't mean that you're going to walk up to a stranger and be like, I'm being vulnerable and talking to you. But it does mean make sure that your peers are understanding where you're trying to go too, that you're trying something new and something different, so that they can support you and they can give you feedback on how things went. If you try something different in a meeting, get that feedback not only right after, but maybe a couple days later. Hey, I had to say it. I had to say this bad news in this way. What did you guys think? How did that come across? And then being willing to hear it. That's hard. That took a long time. I'd say be willing to hear it.
Yeah.
And then just ask. Just ask. What's the worst that can happen? I went to HR and I said, what happens if I come in one day with funny colored hair? And they're like, we don't have a policy against it. I was like, all right, let's try it. And it's finding what's appropriate. I had some really amazing wigs for very formal circumstances, so I wasn't showing up to events with hot purple hair. But it's just ask, right? And you're right. The opportunities to go and travel and learn where the industry is going and how to connect others together and finding out what is going to be beneficial for the members that I'm serving, or maybe finding out that it's actually beneficial for members of somebody else that I know in the industry that's serving. Being able to help each other out. It doesn't happen unless you ask, and be willing to trade, right? Understand, say, hey, I'm willing to do this and give up, X. I'll do these things if I can get something else done in the meantime. So it's being willing to talk to your leader about those conversations and finding ways to make it happen. Don't let the budget stop you. Don't throw variance. I'm not saying that. I'm saying, but don't let the budget stop you. There's always a way to do something. You just have to think creatively and find ways to make it happen.
Right. And showing the value, right? So that kind of goes into that next piece that I'd love to kind of just explore with you a bit is, it always sounds fun, kind of like, oh, we're their birthday party institution, right? Like like you said, we're dancing on out on the branch and we're doing all this fun stuff and we have pink hair, but that has to translate into something of value, right? And so how do you feel like that's been tangible for you guys? It might be in the areas of growth or employee engagement or with the culture, so that you can continue to invest. Because, no matter what you do, as small as down to a pizza party up into, hey, we're going to invest, in our people with some development, trainings, different things like that. There's always going to be a cost, right? And so how have you guys seen that play out for you as you've really poured into some of these areas?
Absolutely. I think I'm wondering if our CFO planted that question with you, Michael. He loves to do that. And it truly is for us. It's finding, let me say this, the biggest compliment in the way that I know that I'm impacting our organization and the credit union movement as a whole and the community that I serve is when we get surveys back that say they treated me like family. They said not right now instead of no. It's finding those members that you're truly making a difference with. And so that it means that you have to go out and you have to understand who are the members that you're serving. I spent a lot of time learning human-centered design, bringing it back to the credit union so that we can truly understand everything that we're doing and why we're doing it. Why are we
Mhm.
partnering with very specific vendors? Are they a good fit for us? Maybe they're not. Maybe if their core values don't align, and or what they're offering isn't what our members are asking for, and
Mhm.
that's where we find the value. We find the
Mhm.
value in the genuine partnerships uh, with our third parties. With
Mhm.
I don't like that. There's vendors. I think there's partners that you have to be working together and both achieving something. Uh,
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
is, but at the end of the day, when we can say yes to a member or make something happen when everyone else has said no, or when they've fallen on a hard time, um, we want to be there and have the right solutions to pick them up. Uh,
Mm.
make sure that we're keeping the credit union, financially strong, but at the same time, uh, finding more ways to be more than just a place people go to cash a check, right? Nobody
Mhm.
cashes a check
Mhm.
anymore. Comes to
Right,
to
right,
dump
right.
out all
Yeah,
their
I get it.
change, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
we want to be that
Mhm.
when we see that our members are coming to us for service requests and help me do X, or I need to learn how to whatever, that's when we know we're making a difference. That's when we know that all the
Yeah.
work we're doing is paid off.
Yeah, so good. Because obviously that retention piece is so important. And you guys
Mhm.
being, this non-for-profit, financial cooperative, obviously that's part of your mission, right? That's part of
Mhm.
your focus and goal. But if I'm hearing you right too, really that investment in your team and your people helps translate that into, hey, we have, more people who are staying with us as members. They're doing more with us, right? You're seeing that profitability grow with the members that you're serving. But then also, something I've seen over and over again with the companies that I work with and that I've been a part of is that, man, once you can really key into those key questions, I have a survey that I roll out for employees, right? A culture survey. And when they answer questions like, oh, I feel really valued in the work I do. I really feel like my potential is being maximized. Man, I feel like I have a great friend at work, or, some of those types of questions. And then you get to track that over time and you see that growth, then it really always translates into higher engagement, which means higher profits, which means, just more that people are wanting to naturally do, in part because they're having fun, right? But also
Mhm.
because they see the mission maybe a little bit more clear of what they're doing to, in your guys' case, helping members. Is that kind of what you've seen a bit as well for you guys?
Oh, absolutely. We are very intentional at making sure our team is connected back to the why. That
Mm,
that individuals here know the work they're doing is making a difference. That they understand not just that there's a change, but the why behind the change, why it's important, or the difference that it's going to make. Uh, it has really, really changed, especially on our team engagement surveys. I like the engagement surveys where things aren't positive. I know that sounds weird, but that's our opportunity to learn and
yeah.
grow, because you're always going to have your highly engaged team members that
Mm,
will go through various cycles, but they're always going to say, "Yeah, it's great. I'm gonna work here forever. I love what we do." And then you're going to have the individual that's kind of on the precipice of, "I don't know if this is right for me,"
mm,
and that's where we can lean into it. Is it at Mazuma, we have people that move jobs all the time because we
mm,
want them to try out new things. We want to find where they're passionate about, where they know that they are contributing in their unique skill set,
mhm,
which is just something that I absolutely love. It's finding that somebody gets hired for one position and moves into another, and then becomes that highly engaged employee. When it moves from this is just a job to this is a career, uh,
mhm.
those moments, and you guys know, you can see it in their eyes when it happens. And I live for that. I live for that split second where you've made a difference.
Mm,
Even if that individual doesn't stay with your company the entire time, the fact
mhm,
that they are choosing your industry to stay in. And
mhm.
there's no lost investment. There's no lost training. What's that terrible phrase, right? Like, why would we send someone to this expensive training and they leave? Well, what happens if we
Mm,
don't and they stay?
right.
Right? Like, there's
Yeah.
there's so much
It's
truth
so
in that.
true. Yeah.
Invest in your team in all kinds of ways. It doesn't have to be a big, fancy, expensive a program, it can be spending 30 minutes just honestly asking, how the heck are you? How
Mm,
are things? What's going on?
mm.
We can learn so much about our team, and then that helps us be better leaders. I always
Yeah.
think when there's a team member that might not be performing to where we're thinking is standard performance, really the first step is stepping back and saying, have we given all the tools and resources possible? Have we
Mm,
done all that we can? Is there anything else that we can do to make sure that this person is successful? And I find
mhm.
that a lot of times that's a possibility, that there are changes that can be made that completely change someone's performance, and it's not necessarily directly related to their day-to-day tasks.
Right. Right. And so if I hear you right, it's really taking a step back and saying, hey, if performance, or maybe, you kind of touched on that buy-in or attitude, or, somebody who's just kind of on the fence, or they're kind of there, right? Maybe they're newer to the organization, or they're just kind of like, yeah, I'm kind of like a 7 or 8, kind of depends on the day, right?
Right.
That it's really pressing into asking more questions, obviously get to know them personally, but also how can we really develop them, right? It might be something else within their role or the organization that they can learn. Have we given them all the tools and resources to really help them be successful, and hold them accountable to like
Mhm.
using those too, right? But then really being consistent. I think that's probably one of the things I hear the most with leaders is, their desire to be consistent in the follow up, consistent in kind of that accountability piece. Just be consistent in making sure that they're having these types of conversations, so that there's not all the busyness that sort of gets in the way of having that kind of connection with their team that they really want. And so, what have you found that's really helpful to combat that? I think the busyness of our lives. This is called the Busy Executives podcast, right?
Right.
So I think busyness is just part of it, and that can kind of have this negative connotation. But I think when you're doing purposeful work, of course, you're typically going to be pretty busy. You're going to be doing a lot. And so, what have you found for yourself, or maybe for your teams, that's really helped you guys stay connected and stay grounded and stay, true to that desire to say, man, I want to make sure that I'm putting, that effort with my team first and foremost.
Yes. I put now hopefully our CFO won't listen to this part. But I put 15 minutes, like I just call it BS time, on intentional time on the calendar, where I'm going to call somebody and just have a conversation.
Mm,
It's not necessarily driven around asking them for accountability to a project or workload. If the conversation turns there in the end, it's more about making sure that I am removing all the obstacles that are preventing them from moving forward. If
mm,
they bring up, hey, yeah, I'm doing okay, but I'm stressed about this, give them the space to talk. uh, keep it light, but then also be thinking about what are the things that you can be removing or changing, or what can you as the leader be moving in the background to make things easier and better for your
mm,
team member, your coworker. It's always, it's those little moments, it's the drop by and say hi that if you're in the office you would do, but it's also making it very intentional, making
mm,
sure that that is happening. It's vital. And then being willing in those conversations, just like you said, we're all going to lose our spark at some point in time. No matter how much we love the work that we're doing, we're going to have a hard day, or we're going to have a hard
mm,
couple of weeks. I'd argue that 2021 was a really hard year, but when you have built those relationships through trust and vulnerability, they get you through. And
mm.
when you can tell someone, yeah, I don't know if I've got my spark right now, that says everything, because then that's letting them know, hey, maybe there's something I can remove to help my coworker, to help my peer. It doesn't mean that someone's looking for a new job or they're looking to leave. It just means we need to find a different way to help them engage, that whatever it is
Mm.
that fills their bucket they're not getting enough time of, let's figure out how we can fill their bucket as a team, as a larger organization, and then pouring that out to our communities as well.
Yeah. Gosh, that's so good because, like you said, it's just natural, especially if somebody's in a role, even for any amount of time, right? And it might be something related to the position or something outside of work. Like, just life's going to happen. So it sounds like just creating this environment where it's okay to actually admit what's reality, right? Instead of maybe
Yes,
pretending or not feeling comfortable sharing some of those things. Is that kind of what I'm hearing?
it is. And I think, Michael, like you articulate things so much better. It's almost like you do this for a living. But it's truly, we can say all day long that, uh, oh, people shouldn't check who they are at the door, and they should come to work and they should be their authentic selves. And that's so easy to say and so hard to do. So the more that
Mm,
we as leaders can do it, the more that we as leaders make space for our team and our peers to do, we're just creating a bigger network of individuals that are there to support. And it makes
mm.
those hard conversations so much easier. Uh,
Yeah.
it
Gosh.
I know you say you're not supposed to refer to work like family, because oftentimes families don't always treat each other the best, or
Mm,
um, but you know what, you can usually be pretty darn honest with your family members, right?
mhm,
You're gonna sit across the Thanksgiving table and you're gonna tell it how it is. And
mhm,
that's what you want in your work environment too. So to some
mhm.
extent, I kind of push back and say, yeah, I'm not going to bring, every single one of my coworkers over for a drink after work, but am I going to make sure that I'm there to support them and listen, and we can have hard conversations? Absolutely. Because the
Mm.
more I know where they're coming from, the better I can understand their perspective. The better
Yeah.
that I as a leader can see what are the things that has shaped them and made them uniquely them, right? Like,
Mm.
it's when we can learn more about people, and the ways that they make decisions, it helps us interact better. It helps us
Yeah.
make better decisions as an organization overall. That's what I love.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
hard. It's not
It
easy.
is hard. It
It's
is. And do you find this is a totally loaded question because I have my own opinion on it. So you can totally disagree with me, but I'm wondering if this is where you're at too, is folks who are maybe our generation or our age and younger have
Mhm,
sort of this hunger and this desire for more authentic work relationships and just a more
mhm,
authentic workplace. Whereas what I've tended to see is a little bit more of the traditional mindset. Maybe before it was kind of like, hey, don't go there, don't talk about these things, you're here to
mhm,
work, the validation that you need is the paycheck, that type of thing. And there's some really positive elements from that sort of
mhm,
generational focus. But what I tend to see here and hear more of is that people, well, nobody ever comes to me or organizations come to me and be like, yeah, the reason everybody's leaving is because people felt, too valued, or that we were too positive, or that we had too much celebration, right? You never hear
they
that from
cared
somebody
about
you
me too
talk to.
much. Yeah.
Yeah, seriously. Why did I leave? Oh, you know why I left? Because they cared about me too much, right? They were, valuing me too much. Like, you'd never hear that, right? It's
Right.
always the opposite. It's always, oh yeah, I was doing all
Yeah.
this work, but I just don't feel like I'm seen or heard. And that's truly, however we do that is obviously a big focus. And so this is a super long-winded question, but do you feel like there's some of that generational shift that's happening that sometimes the younger crowd can get beat up for or blamed
Mhm,
for, oh, they don't want to work or whatever it might be for millennials
mhm.
and younger. But is some of that maybe potentially this shift of, hey, they want to just be more vulnerable and known and have sort of this more holistic environment that they get to operate in? Do you feel like that's
Mhm.
any piece of what you've seen so far?
I would say definitely, and I think it comes from um, a desire of transparency. And again, it's going back to connecting to that why. So I would say last Friday, great example. March Madness. A bunch of us got together after work, and a young professional in a different line of business was talking to three of us that sit in the Gen X category, kind of on that cusp. And they were like, "Well, how much do you make?" And all three of us got really quiet. Like, you're not supposed to talk about that. No, 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 we don't talk about that.
Right.
Uh, but we called him out. We're like, well, why do you want to know? And he goes, well, I want to know what I need to do to get there. So
Mm,
it was not the number that they cared about. Yes, everybody is looking to maximize their career potential, uh, but it was really more about, well, what do I need to do to get there? There was that question behind the question of, really just want to know what the heck it is that you do and how do I get there? And I think when I'm working with um, individuals of a different generation, it's really comes down to transparency, letting individuals understand, making a space where they can ask questions. And yes, as executives, sometimes there are times that we can't say the entire answer.
Sure.
But I truly believe that I can say, you know what? You're going to have to trust me. There's things going on that I can't share yet, but I will share, and then follow back up on that. Whatever the topic is, follow back up and say, hey, I told you I was going to follow back up on X, Y, or Z, and this is why. And to me, that's where I've found the relationships to be, to ensure that we're creating that value for the team member. I think it all comes down to transparency. It's not. I wish I had a better answer, because you had such a beautiful question, and it really is like, just they want that honesty. They want to know, how do I get there, and what are the steps to get this project off the road? Or, how do I get a project on the roadmap? How do I get it moving? How do I make my voice heard? There's always more questions there.
Right. Right. And I think that guidance too, like you said, of, if it's a young professional specifically, like knowing what that pathway is, I think is always really important. But knowing that there's maybe some extra pieces that need to be added on, if I hear you right too, of, hey, it's transparency, it's value, it's knowing the mission, it's living that out, it's bringing in some of these elements of what we're doing in the community, and making sure that it's sort of that full package. Whereas, for some folks, it's just a matter of, cool, I'm showing up, I get a paycheck, I'll work hard, that type of thing. That's great. But it seems like, especially for the younger generation, there's so many more boxes to check. And I don't always think that's a bad thing. I think it actually can help transform organizations in some really positive ways too. And so it sounds like you guys are doing an amazing job with that, obviously, and really being keenly focused on how do we engage everybody, no matter kind of what place they're at.
It's a great thing when you can genuinely work for a company and say title doesn't matter, right? When all thoughts and opinions in the room are heard and are valued, it's an amazing thing. I think we really work hard here to connect individuals, to help them find their passion, and make sure that they have what they need to be successful. And sometimes what they need to be successful is to go out, into the world, maybe try a different line of business. But that's what we're here for. The jobs that we have today aren't going to exist tomorrow, right? Or hopefully tomorrow. But like 10 years from now, right?
Maybe not. Right?
I've got a high school senior. The job that he's going to have when he's 40 hasn't even been invented yet. So who are we to say that because we've come up a certain way, know the right way to move ahead? We don't know what the future is going to hold. So we better take every opportunity to learn from each other as many times as we can, and over and over, and just keep listening. Because there's some things you'll repeat, but there are other things that, maybe if we can stop somebody else from making the same mistake we did, it's pretty valuable.
Yeah. Definitely. So true. That's good. I'm curious, you obviously get to make a huge impact, Laura, right? And you get to go and travel and do all these different things. What helps you when it comes to the balance piece, right? What helps you when you're balancing, you've got a family, you've got work, you've got all the different priorities in your own life. And then how does that translate for your team too? How do you really encourage them to have that balance, to make sure that they don't go from, a place of burnout, or, maybe they're not as engaged. I mean, there's sort of that fine line that everybody sort of has. And so I'm just curious what you found has really been helpful for you and for your team.
So I feel like a broken record, but it really is transparency and vulnerability. So yes, I have an amazing opportunity to travel and learn what's happening within the world, and share the message of collaboration, cooperation, with a lot of different industries, the importance of culture. But I also have a special needs daughter. And when medical events come up, I don't think twice. Um, Part of our kind of emergency like walkthrough that we do when things are about to go off the rails is I'm not texting my leader or individuals on my team to say, oh no, look at me, my daughter's. It is a flow of, you just so you know, this is where we're at, and it's a genuine desire, and it's I may be offline or I may be delayed, but so I've set that expectation that right now my world is stopped. um, my world is what she needs until we get back to a more stable place, or until whatever is happening is resolved. But it's also being very transparent with my employer when those things are happening, being transparent with others that, hey, there's something going on, that this is going to make it easier or harder to do, but not taking any 1 second for granted. It took a long time to find that balance for me of, it's okay if I'm in the airport to sit down and to have a drink before that flight. If I don't check email for 15 minutes, it's going to be okay. Because I know I'm going to be doing it that night.
Right? Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right. The world is not going to, and I run through, I think it runs through, what's the worst that could happen? If whatever I do, what is the worst thing that could happen? If I am unavailable for 30 minutes, what's the worst thing that could happen? And really and truly, it's building that team that knows how to step in, and then doing the same for them. Recognizing when they're going through burnout. It's not uncommon. Well, I shouldn't say uncommon, because again, with the budget, but putting time on someone's calendar for a meeting that isn't a meeting, that is, they show up for the meeting, but it's really, this is an hour for you to go get a massage, go get your nails done, take time for you. You know what? Leave early today. I've got you covered. And it's finding and doing it to what is right for each individual person, right? When not everybody is going to want to go get their nails done at 4:00 on a Tuesday or whatever, but it's finding what they're in tune with. What is it that they need to take care of themselves, and showing them that it is okay to take that time, and that you respect that time as their leader, as their team member, as their coworker, and know that it all comes back to you. Because there are moments that in my world it stops, that we drop everything, and I'm grateful that I've never once worried, oh no, what is my employer going to think?
Yeah, it's so good. And really having that priority in the right place, right? Whether it's with your family or, some of those pieces where it's like, hey, if I hear you right, hey, I'm working, and this is bigger than work, and here's how to do this appropriately. Like you said, you're not necessarily looking for a bunch of, Laura, I'm so sorry, that type of thing. Although there might be something bigger going on, you're just more, again, being transparent and a little bit vulnerable of, hey, this is reality for me. And here's what's going on in my world. And I love how you focused on the individualized approach. And I was thinking about how, I'm sure you're the same way. If I'm going online and, I try to buy local, but I still buy stuff on Amazon or online too. Right. And so, and they know me really well, because then it's like, hey, you bought this, what about that? Marketing is fantastic at knowing you kind of better than you know yourself. And I think sometimes that's just, it seems like, such a big thing that they do, and they've got big data and all that. But as leaders, I think that's such a powerful tool for us as well, right? And even something as simple as, hey, I know that this, team member being able to go away for an hour and go watch their kid's soccer game would mean more to them than anything else, right? And really gifting that time, or gifting them something, even something as simple as like what do they like? If you gave me a box of Junior Mints and you're like, Michael, love what you're doing, here's some Junior Mints, here you go. Like that's my candy. Like I'm going to be excited about that. So it doesn't have to break the bank, right? But it's specific to that person. You know them to a certain level. and they've shared that with you, or I've done team member preference sheets where it's like I kind of get to know a
Right.
little bit of the things that make them tick and what they really enjoy, so that when there's times of celebration, or maybe hard things that happen, I know what to do, instead of feeling like, oh,
Mhm.
what do I do here, or just doing something generic that doesn't really feel like it's an individualized response to something. Is that kind of what you've seen
Right.
as well?
Oh, absolutely. And I'd say I love starting with the preference sheets, right? Of this is my favorite soda, or I like public recognition or private recognition. Keep updating those sheets, because
Yeah.
as your team members evolve and grow, I opened a HR folder for an individual that was coming onto my team, and their sheet was like 15 years old, and I'm like, oh my gosh, the person that was 15 years old, these are not the same things. Like, let's let's work on finding those meaningful ways, and
Mhm.
don't make as a leader, don't make it a task. Oh my
Right.
gosh, if they want to fill out the sheet, great. If they don't, that tells you everything you need to know right there too. Right.
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
there's nothing worse than getting handed one of those pieces of paper, and it's like, well, you have to fill this
Mhm.
out. Like,
Right, right.
okay,
And
yeah, it's
sometimes, like you said, it's not gonna be a good fit even for that person, because 'cause they're gonna be like, "I don't wanna tell you all this stuff," or, they
right.
might be a little bit more standoffish, so it's kind of that pursuit of, like,
Mhm,
how can I figure out this person? How can I see kinda how they tick, whether they tell me or not? And, I still do have this little notepad in my phone where it's like, here's what are, people's favorite coffee drinks, like, just paying attention to that, right? And like, oh, hey, you and I go out to coffee, and then you order your thing, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna jot this down for next time, because then if I'm like,
mhm,
hey, I surprised you and I brought you this coffee, like, how did you know I like white mocha? That's crazy, or like just that level of care, I think
mhm,
sometimes isn't really our focus, because we've got so much else going on. And I think as people continue to feel valued and cared for, even in just a little simple ways, not only,
mhm,
like, to your point, does that really drive them to want to be transparent, to want to grow, to be vulnerable, kind of, and reciprocate that. But
mhm,
gosh, I think it's like 20% increased profit typically when you have highly engaged team, just from what you would typically see from an average team. If all those team members, or most of them, are highly engaged, you're going to increase profits by 20% on average. And that's
mhm.
incredible. That's a huge
Huge.
boost to the bottom line. But I just think it's a lot more fun too, right?
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
so much more fun, right? And,
Yeah.
and you do get to develop those relationships with individuals, and uh, it is nice to surprise. We call them surprise and delight moments, right? When
Yeah.
they're not expecting it, to know
Mhm.
that they are seen, that they're heard, that the contributions are important.
Mhm. Yeah. We've
Gosh,
we've touched on so
that's
many.
the best
Yeah.
things we can do.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt you.
no, no. I was just saying that's some of the best things that we can do. It shows that
Mhm.
trust, and then it leads into what I've seen, especially on a lot of the project teams that I lead. The more times that you are intentional in just having one-off conversations. Obviously, you're not going to schedule it in the most busy time of day when they're trying to get,
Right.
900 things done, but it's when you've got those, people are more willing to come forward with what are the obstacles that are in front of them?
Mm.
What are the mistakes that they've made? There's
Mm.
a lot less finger pointing, and I've seen it on teams that where it's been very intentional, and I can tell if I haven't done it very well
Mm.
on, with
Mhm.
other teams, because I mean, kind of multiple different teams throughout the organization. That, wait a minute, we've got a lot of finger pointing going on. We haven't made it a safe space to talk about what's happening. We haven't made it the
Yeah.
place that people feel like they can share the obstacles that they're running into, or admit the mistakes that they've made.
Mhm.
I love putting on evaluations, failures. It goes right back to my first CEO, because if you're not failing, you're not trying, right?
Mm. Mhm.
It's cliche, but it's so true. Show me that you tried something new, that you went out of the box. If it works, fantastic. We're going to celebrate. If it doesn't work, we're going to figure out why it didn't work, and then we're
Mm.
going to celebrate that we tried something.
Mhm.
It's so important to celebrate failure. So important to celebrate
Mm.
failure when you've got folks that are willing to go out on a limb, to take a chance, to try something new,
Mhm.
approach something a different way.
Right.
What's the worst that can happen? You learn something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it has to start from the top, obviously, as you've talked about, and really developing that culture to allow it to be okay, right? Because there's lots of
Yeah,
organizations and a lot of cultures. I would say probably a good portion, a majority who aren't necessarily that way, right? Where
very true.
failure is seen as weakness, or gosh, I don't want this person to have something against me. In a
Yeah.
lot of cultures, it can feel very siloed or isolated. And so what I love is that you're focusing on, well, number one, as leaders, we get to be vulnerable, but also own up to our own mistakes, also
Yes.
apologize, right? Also, hey, guess what? I screwed up on this, guys, and here's what I learned from it. Turning it really
Mhm.
into this positive, which I love, and celebrating failure because it always presents an opportunity, right?
Mhm.
And how do we grow from it? So, have you found that to be something that's obviously that you guys have grown in,
Mhm.
but you tend to go back to maybe once a project is over, or as you're rolling something out, hey, let's go backwards and not just focus on all the positive. Let's focus on some of the stub toes, right? Some of the issues that we had, so we can learn from those as well.
We like to call them our like our project autopsies, right? What are the things
Mm,
that were successful? Um, but really, what is it that we learned? We focus a lot on uh, how did we learn about interacting with each other? Uh, how did we
mhm,
learn uh, with setting the right expectations for each other? Worked with a team member who loved to work overnight. And I would be frustrated because I'm like, I am trying to reach this person. I have this part of the project. I'm trying to test. I've got this, that, or the other thing. But they did their best work in the late evening. So
mm,
it was, after the fact, going back and saying, all right, what can we, how do we fix this or not fix it? How do we learn each other's styles and be able to find ways to communicate in
mm,
ways that work well for us? So on future projects, we will set times where I'm up late or they're up early, and we're working together on projects. But it's not just right after you finished whatever the widget is that you finished to go back
mm,
and go, because people are still going to be super emotional.
mm,
Your project closeout or your autopsy, whatever you want to call it, you got to give your widget some time to settle, some time to
mm.
for individuals to reflect, sometimes to work out the kinks, because otherwise your autopsy is going to focus on the technical things that aren't working in that
Right.
moment, and that's not going to bring your team further. Yes, you
Mm,
need to address those. Yes, it needs to be part of the review. Is it something that's going to make that project team successful again in the future? No. So
mm.
let's focus on the people. Let's focus on
Yeah.
um, how we communicate, setting those clear expectations in the beginning. This is how we're going to communicate when we're meeting remotely. Our cameras will be on, whatever the rules are for
Mm,
your organization, or that is right for your team. Setting those, calling people out if they're not, uh, but then it's also at the end going, how did this go? did
mm.
we did we succeed at what we were trying to do, and did we come out stronger on the other side because of it?
Mhm. That's so good. Yeah, and it's true because
Yeah.
not only is it a powerful after action review, but it really helps set the team up for success. And I love how you are focusing on those different areas, not just technical, but hey, with
Yeah.
our culture, hey, how do we communicate? How are relationships, right? Are things better after that or not? And sometimes with big launches and big projects, relationships can be really strained, right? Or there can be
Yeah.
some things to kind of work through so that it's not just, hey, let's just jump into the next thing. And so I
Yes.
love that you guys do that and that you're mentioning that as well.
You
So
have to
that's
take the time to celebrate the good and the
mm,
learning.
mm,
We move so fast, it can be so easy to just jump to the next thing, and you
yeah,
have to take that time and appreciate the work that was done, celebrate the good stuff, learn. It's a piece that too often gets missed because we're so busy getting on to the
mm,
next thing, and
mm,
it's a very intentional piece,
yeah,
to go back and have those reviews, and or just calling each other, after a meeting and being like, you know what, I didn't say that the right way, and
mm,
and I'm sorry,
mm.
or you know what, hey, you said this and it bothered me. It's the more that you can have conversations like that, the stronger your team will be.
Yeah. And I love how you said pick up the phone. I've always said, gosh, don't do any of that through email or text or anything like that, right?
Yes.
Like how help it be timely. There's like this sweet spot, right? Where it's like, well, I can't do it when I'm super hot, like right after the meeting.
Right.
Bad idea. But I can't let it go past, the next, like I have that 24-hour
Mhm.
rule, right? Where it's like, I got to
Right.
talk to somebody or at least set something up so that, that can be addressed. Cause I think those things can just drag on or just
Mhm.
affect the relationship in ways that you don't want. Right. And
Yes.
so, yeah, I think that's awesome. So, well, I know I could talk to you all day, Laura, and I
Yeah.
want to respect and honor your time. And it's been so fun to hear more of your story and what you've been doing at Mazuma Credit Union, but also, what are you focused on when we're looking at over the next 6 months? Right, there's been a lot of challenges just in banking in general. Obviously, as
Yes.
a credit union, you guys are so well positioned to really help your members, but
Mhm.
just a lot of uncertainty out there, right, over the next 6 to 12 months. So, as a leader, what are maybe
Mhm.
one or two things that you're just really intently focused on for your own growth, for your own learning? The things that you're really holding true to as you move into this next phase for you and for your team.
Ooh, such a good question. So my brain is spinning with different directions to go. I I would say as we move into this time of uncertainty, it is super important that our collective Mazuma team understands how safe and sound we are, how safe the financial system is, what led to issues in the past, but so that they can then articulate it to our membership and letting our membership know. But we also want to be proactive and look ahead and make sure that we're sending communications and say, hey, if you do get laid off, if as as we move through this economic environment, we know that there will be more layoffs. Come and talk to us. Here's how Mazuma will work something out with you. There is no one set way
Mm,
to work out a way to help somebody who's going through a hard time. But the first step is communication. So it's
mm,
really educating our membership that we are here for them, and making sure that our team knows
mm,
that we're there for them, that we have resources for them.
mm.
Uh, uh, I started myself in a small group. We started a food pantry for our team in 2020, right
Wow.
before the world shut down, and that's continued, and it's only for our team members. So it's just reminding them, hey, this is here for you, and it's funded by our team
Mm,
members for our team members. The organization has nothing to
mm,
do with it, other than they give us some space to have it. So it's reminding others that we're there, helping them understand the financials and the so that when news comes out, people can
mm.
hear it from voices that are trusted. It's
Yeah.
really those are the two big things for me. It's just
Yeah.
reassurance, but
Mhm.
also with that understanding of why. I'm not just saying safety and soundness. Here's what it means. Here's why we can say it. Here's why it's
Right.
important. But then, like strategically, real time payments. We could talk about that
Mm.
all day long. How is money going to move super fast? We think it moves fast now, and we're talking nanoseconds
Mm.
here in the future. And so I'm very, very, very excited to see what the next 6 months bring in the world of payments, and how we can help our members be able to move their money securely,
Mhm.
and with less exposure to fraud. So
Mm.
give you kind of a work and a personal answer
Yeah.
ish.
I
Leave
love
it to
it. I
Laura to
love it.
talk too much, but this has just been an
No.
absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I look forward to us continuing to chat and have random Zoom calls. They're the best.
No, thank you so much for your time, Laura. I really appreciate it. Obviously, just all the ground that we got to cover, and hopefully, I get to connect with you again soon. But thank you so much for your time, and yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Awesome. You too. Bye, Michael.